Welcome back, and it is time for To The Point. Remember, earlier on we said that the conversation will be about stories of resilience and redemption, even as we think and rethink on ways of making sure that those that have been ex-convicts or ex-prisoners get to be reinstated into society. And, we ensure that the space is safe for them. And equally, we just get them into spaces where they can join in and make sure that, of course, we deal with these questions of crime and concerns that continue to bedevil us. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have Kaploti in studio, but he is not here, thanks to the rains. But we hope to get a hold of him online, joining us, of course, virtually, or perhaps via phone. I'll be introducing the other two gentlemen that will help us unpack this. But before then, let's just get to understand the concept of the conversation tonight. And we look at the graphics that speak to just what an ex-prisoner is, or an ex-convict, and perhaps what are some of the things that need to be done to ensure that once they're released out, they are able to come back to society and, find spaces that are good enough to make sure that they're better persons. And so just who is an ex-prisoner? An ex-prisoner is any person who has been released, that is from a federal, state, or local correctional facility, or who has been sentenced to a term of probation by, of course, the state. And of course, that will be looking at what is the next line. Of course, there are many dehumanizing terms that could be used to describe these people that would be considered, criminal, of course, based on what the society would label them, or who have undergone these criminal justice histories. This would include offenders, delinquents, criminals, prisoners, convicts, inmates. And frequently, these labels persist even after an individual serves their entire sentence in prison and they're released back to society, which is one of the things that we want to speak about this evening. And words like ex-felons, ex-prisoners, ex-convicts, and ex-offenders are used to stigmatize these individuals, and they classify the people, of course, who have already dealt with these concerns of criminal justice system. And when speaking with those who have experienced the same, the criminal justice system, we will certainly, of course, get to find ourselves using phrases that are a bit dehumanizing, and some of them will argue that this is not so good. There's that assumption or notion, as one would argue, that sometimes when they're viewed by people in society, there's always an element of fear. There's always an element of assumption that this guy is somehow going to find himself back to prison. But then again, that is not always the case. That's the reason why I would have wished to have Kaploti, and I hope that we get a hold of him virtually so that he can share his experience having stayed out, in prison and now out of prison for ages now, a musician, and, finding it difficult to just gel into society, but at the same time managing. And there are many dehumanizing terms, as I have said. Of course, a person or individual who has previously dealt with the justice system, a person or individual who has served time in prison in the past, or who has criminal record. This, of course, are some of the phrases that would be used on these individuals that we say are perhaps not the best. What is the next one, Mr. Director? And yes, we take a look at some of the hardships that they have to go through, having come out of prison, the treatment gaps, they will tell you that sometimes they come out of, the jail probably, or from prison, and they're not in the best of shape health-wise. So what are some of the things that actually need to be done to make sure that as they are released out of custody, then their health care coverage or concerns are looked into? Some of the causes of delay, are there any in the country? Is it necessary for us to make sure that, this is addressed or not so? But away from it, lack of support. Not all inmates have access to outside support networks, as they would argue. And even those who do may not actually receive the assistance they require appropriately, as well as manage their mental health. Individuals suffering from severe mental health disorders might not know just how to treat their illnesses, or even recognize the appropriate resources to seek this kind of assistance. And so once they are released out to the world, sometimes it's pretty difficult for them to do just how they get to maneuver, how they manage to get to spaces where then they can integrate back to society as should be. Next. All right, and we still look at the questions of stigma. This perhaps could be the biggest of their problem as it stands. And this stigma does not, necessarily get to them or attack them directly. It spreads up to the level of their very own loved ones, their family members and all that. And so generally speaking, you are on your own. That is after leaving the criminal justice system. And of course, they say as a nation, we provide protections to people who are behind bars because they are regarded as vulnerable group. But we do not typically extend those protections to the people who have served their time in prison and now they are out to the world. And of course, managing their relationships, pretty much a difficult experience. I mean, having spoken to a couple of them, they say being incarcerated alters the dynamics of a family, and this making it difficult for ex-offenders to get back in touch with their loved ones. And of course, I mean, this is basically something that is even witnessed in the United States and other superpower countries, as they would argue. In the US, over half of adult inmates and parents or are parents to children of 55% underage. And I mean, they find it very difficult to just get back to society, to just get back to their families, to just get back to make sure that their families then they trust that, these people are changed individuals and all that. Yes. All right, after serving their sentences, community leaders, including traditional and religious leaders and representatives of the local civil society organizations, play a critical role in making sure that, they help them force formerly incarcerated individuals to successfully gel into the society and the communities. Well, because of their close ties to the community, these leaders can act as a mediator between ex-offenders and anyone they have harmed. And of course, all the while promoting their active engagement as law-abiding members of society. And remember, most of them actually will tell you the reason why they got to prison is basically because maybe they wronged someone, and then therefore it becomes difficult for them to go back to the very, very same space and even win the trust of the individuals of society, and particularly the people that they got to do this wrong to. And so the call is on basically, the opinion leaders and the shapers in community to help them integrate better. All right, yes, I'm told that this perhaps would be the last one. Yes, this is the last one that we have. And I mean, there's basically so much that we can look into, but allow us to shift gears to this other side. As earlier mentioned, Kaploti was the guest who was supposed to share his experience having come out of prison and now getting into the space of music and back to society and just helping, individuals as well to shun these aspects of crime. But not to worry, because we already have two gentlemen that as well will help us unpack this conversation. And I must thank you, gentlemen. I know it's pretty much difficult to find your way here, especially in this rainy moment, but all the same, you have managed. Pete Ouko is the Executive Director of Crime CPOA. He'll be telling us just exactly what it is that Crime CPOA does, but just by the name, you can almost guess what it is all about. You also have Brian Olang, who's a household name right here on TV 47, human rights lawyer. Thank you so much, Wakili, for always creating time to be here. So we are talking about these individuals who would have started by just getting the story of Kaploti, but you have seen the couple of things that I get to highlight here. On a human rights perspective, just how easy is it for an ex-convict or an ex-prisoner to get back to society, to gel in without being looked at as suspects?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Number one, I think the way your system is designed,
yes,
it's designed in a way that is so vindictive. So let's say one is convicted, right? You serve your sentence and after some time you're released.
Yeah.
You come back to a society that still views you as as a convict, and then again even the system around you itself that doesn't support you.
Yeah.
Because you find that the moment you come out, you still have a criminal record to deal with.
Yeah.
So it means, and you see from employment, most employers require you to produce a good conduct. I think almost all employers in Kenya require you to have that.
Right.
So you can imagine you have served your sentence. It means you've paid your dues. So you come back to a society that still again castigates you. You go, you go looking for employment. You're told go come back with a good conduct, right? It comes back and it shows that actually you're convicted of a certain offense, and these guys castigate you,
right?
And they throw you out. You're shunned out. So it means that you cannot even get employment, right? So now it leaves you with what other options do you have? Do you go back to crime? what do you do with yourself now?
Yeah.
So those are the challenges I believe that as a country moving forward, if indeed we want to change, and if indeed we want to ensure that our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, be it rightfully or wrongfully, come out of that system, actually get back their lives. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And you know, these things can happen to anybody. It can happen to you, it can happen to me. So let's not look at it as if it's something so unique that it can only happen to a particular kind of people.
Right.
Yes.
I do not know whether you have seen this before we come to Pete, but there are instances where one gets to prison, or maybe not to prison, they just, I mean, they're probably apprehended, then they're back to society. Before you know it, they're apprehended back. Perhaps, you know, some of them actually would even argue that pale ni home, and they find their ways back into society. How do we deal with such kinds of persons? And I mean, without looking at them again as suspects?
You're talking about people who are, I think,
you know, probably
habitual offenders.
Petty crime,
yes.
And then you're out. Before you know it again, you're back probably for some months, you're out again. Before you know it for some months, and then you're back.
No, I think the best way to deal with that, because you see, we need to look beyond why are these people committing these crimes.
Yes.
Is it because of the lack of employment? So can we deal with that? Because you find nobody goes and commits crime, you know, willfully.
Right.
You cannot go, I mean, I cannot walk out now and snatch a phone willfully. Yeah. So it means there's actually a societal problem that we need to deal with. So without dealing with that, then we'll continue having this habitual or continuous offenders.
Right.
Because if you come out, assuming now, these petty offenders, you're arrested, maybe you're homeless, right? You're arrested for a petty offense, you're taken there. And at least there you're able to get some food. You're able to get, you know, a roof over your head.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you come back to the society, I mean, you don't have money, you don't have food, how do you survive? So I think we need to ensure that at least, especially these street children, these habitual offenders, how do you ensure that at least they have something to eat, at least they have a roof over their head?
Right.
Because in my opinion, nobody commits a crime willfully, you know.
Well, and of course we come to Pete, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, you know, these, even as they commit these crimes, they probably are aware that this is not a good thing to do. And therefore, even as we say, crime see poor, it's probably something that is well known. Even the offenders know very well that whatever it is that they're doing is not good. Then one would want to ask themselves, why is that you would go ahead and do it? You know, why is it that you will go ahead and engage in crime activities, knowing very well that crime see poor, as you tell us just exactly what it is that you do?
I mean, it's a rhetorical question. And I think you put it so well, and Wakili has also really explained. The opportunistic crimes, and I don't believe Kenyans are evil, Kenyans are criminal, or they're inclined to crime. So he's talked about the foundational issues that could be leading young people to crime. When we started Crime See Poor, it was out of the need to address that youth crime issue. We are a youth-centric organization that is a catalyst in the field of legal empowerment, crime prevention, and social justice. So the social justice aspect deals with the foundational issues that leads to crime. Is it dysfunctional families? Is it broken homes? Is it drugs and substance abuse? But then drugs and substance abuse now becomes a wellness mental health issue.
Yeah.
Because if I get addicted, then I need to support that habit. And so I'm not stealing because I'm a criminal. I'm stealing to support a health issue.
Okay.
So wellness now has become a core issue in crime prevention as well that we have to address. You'll find that people maybe who are charged with committing murder, and maybe now in other offenses as well, they're taken for mental assessment to find out if they're in the state to answer to that charge. But the fact of whether they were in the state when they committed the crime can only come at the time of the trial. So there are the mental wellness aspects as well. He's talked about poverty, he's talked about opportunities. Are we giving our young people equal opportunities? And then the second thing I want to talk about crime. Most times when we talk about crime, we talk about phone snatching. We talk about, you know, assault, we talk about that, which are very bad crimes. But how come we don't talk about corruption at the same level, which could be causing all these other crimes? Right. Because if I take 1 billion made for those young people, how many lives have I robbed? And so we should look at corruption not as corruption, but let's call it a crime. Because when we mollycoddle and change names and use different phrases, people think this is a cooler crime. So it's easier to go do wash, it's easier to go do the other things, because I'll not be regarded as a criminal, I'll be regarded as a hero.
Okay.
And so it goes to the deep psyche of Kenyans. on what we define crime to be, and why we should not stigmatize as a particular social. You know, I was in Embu prison this week, this week, and I met two young girls, two young ladies. They told me something that broke my heart. They're employed as bar attendants in a club in Embu, but there's been a trend. They say that the owner of that club, apparently, when it reaches end month, before he pays you, he charges you, he gets you to be charged with theft. Then you are taken to prison.
Okay.
Then another lady also comes at the end of the month, same charge, another lady, same charge. So there's a trend. So we found that it's a trend, and we met them in the same prison, gone at different times, but surprisingly, all at the end of the month. So if you tell me that everybody within the prison setup is a criminal, then it's a no. I mean, there are nuances to this that we need to address right now. There are people using the criminal justice system to settle scores. You know, and we have to look at it holistically. So I want to congratulate the prisons department, the prisons department in Kenya, which moved from, which had a paradigm shift from punishment that was there before Uncle Modi's reforms and the late President Kibaki, to now correction and rehabilitation. So some of the things you're talking about earlier, where people are looking, when they go out, what are they going to do? What skill sets have they learned? The mood in the prisons department, the mood within the prisoners themselves, or the people in prison, is very positive, because they accept, whether wrongfully or rightfully convicted, the moment they find themselves in that space, they want to do something productive with their lives. Right now, as we're talking, by the way, my sincere apologies and condolences to those who've lost their lives in this flood. Some of the people are championing the support within the ghettos, like in Mathare, that, and in Kibra, actually ex-prisoners. They have that heart. They are like the community, the society could have judged them wrongly or could have judged them rightly, but they have that second chance, and they want to make the most out of it.
All right, and I mean, I probably would want to come back to that question later and just get to understand. Someone has stayed in prison for ages, for years. You know, they will tell you that I got here when I was this young, then I have this presidential pardon and I have to go out. I do not know where to begin. There are instances where some of them would actually say, I would rather stay behind. But legally speaking, why are you even talking about scenarios where whether charged rightfully or wrongfully? I mean, what does this speak to the criminal justice system generally, looking at why would someone go and spend years in prison just because they were wrongly charged?
No, I think my brothers touched on that, a bit of that. And I think, you know, I think our justice system, and as much as the police, I'll say sometimes they do a wonderful work, and sometimes those who are in prison, some of them are there rightfully. At the same time, you find that people use actually this same system to settle scores. So for instance now, if I owe you money, right? You know, that's a dearly a civil matter. What do you go and do? You go and report to a police station. In fact, you call even, maybe a cousin of yours is a police officer. Olang is here, you know, he owes me 10,000. What do we do? Next, a Land Rover comes. The next thing, I'm taken to a cell. If I'm not able to pay, I'm taken to court. The charge can be anything, from even robbery, violence. I mean, it's so... I mean, this country is just... if you look at the crimes, the things these people do in these police stations, I mean, they're so heinous and outrageous completely. So these are the main problems. Then, so one of the biggest problems we have is that issue where people use this system to settle scores. And then secondly, our police officers also feel they are so lazy. So for instance, now a crime happens here. All of us are rounded up. You see, they take, instead of conducting proper investigations, to pinpoint who did this, who did not do what. Sometimes you find you end up in prison, even in remand for so long, over something you even never did. So the issue of even the police taking time to conduct proper investigations and to ensure that the proper people are actually in prison or in remand, they don't do that. Just a system where people are just lazy, they don't want to conduct proper investigations. So you end up even in remand or in prison for so long. You
know, it's like Cairo KK is watching us. Guess what he is saying? He says, Linda, mimi siku moja nimelala ndani na si ati kwa sababu hata nilikuwa nimefanya anything, nilikuwa nimeng'ara Sahara. Kuna wakati it is sad. Kuna wakati Sahara boys ukiangaliwa umeng'ara Sahara tu, wewe unaingia ndani. Sansi hata hataki kujua ni nini imeendelea, hata hataki kujua story amekupata ni usiku, uko ndani.
You know, I think the police also have a way. You know, there's a time even if you had dreadlocks, it was a problem.
You know?
Yes, and I think I remember in campus, I think in first year, I got arrested, you know, for just walking around, because I think the way they watch you and the way you're dressed, you know, they look at you and they decide, okay, this one looks like a criminal. And you know, now it's a way for them to mint money from you.
Yeah.
So if you cannot, maybe if they arrest, they look at you, right now they are dressed, probably I will not get touched.
Yeah.
They look at somebody else with the Sahara, Timberland, and you know, we're the same, we're all human beings. They'll be like, okay, now let's profile this one. This one looks like a thief. You end up in prison, we end up umelala ndani because of that profiling.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find that if you're not even able to pay that bribe, you are taken even to court because you're unable to pay.
Right.
Yes.
And when it gets to the court level, it's a whole different...
Now it's a whole issue. You know, like now you see, the moment you get to court, now the charge is already there. It's read out, and then the mistake most people make is that a charge is read out. Mtu anakuambia wewe kubali tu. Utasaidiwa. In fact, kubali tu. Then hiyo siku nakubali is the worst day now of your life.
Yeah.
That happens.
That does happen, yeah.
I think you saw recently of these two gentlemen who are, I think, what do you call this? I think on Mombasa Road.
Yes.
The ones who were hanging out.
The ones who were hanging out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you remember they pleaded guilty. What next?
Yes.
6 days in prison now. They're awaiting sentencing. Yeah.
And Kenyans were out there actually asking some of these questions. Why don't you do this and that to the same person who is a leader in the country, who did almost the same thing? Why is it that they were not arrested? And I think it boils down to what it is that you say. Why is it that we decide that this is petty crime? It is criminalized even more than corruption would be.
You see, the thing is, I think Kenya sometimes is just about bad manners. Because if you have responsibility as a leader, you need to lead. And when you show bad manners as a leader and then people model it, or people ape it, or young people do the same, then you hold responsibility over, you know, you have a stake in what's happened. Right. Now, what are we doing about all this? Because we realize that many people are breaking the law, like those guys were hanging out of that car. They might just have thought it's a rave thing, you know, it's easy. They're not the first, by the way. We've seen many young people doing that. Right. They're the first to be publicly punished or publicly held accountable. So what we've done at Crime Support is we noticed many young people, or many Kenyans don't know the law. So what we're doing under our legal empowerment program, which is called Sheria Mashinani, is to teach young people the law. So every Thursday we have an online session where lawyers come on board. We have criminal justice sector players. I'll invite my friend here to do the human rights side, because I've seen he has the nuances with the, you know, the connectivity between the two. But the thing is, we're getting practitioners, whether the police or anybody, to teach people about the basics on the law. So you don't have any excuse for saying, this happened, I didn't know it. There are issues that are, I mean, people are fighting at home because of issues of succession.
Right.
And they don't know that even women and men have the same rights in law over property. So those basic things that are in our constitution, we are breaking it down under Sharia Mashinani at Crime Support. Now the key thing is, and we think TV47, I mean, this is not my first time here either. We just want to be in a space where Kenyans, by the time they end up with the lawyers or the advocates, they know their basic rights. So no one takes advantage of them. One of the key areas I realized in the bribe thing is because I'll be told anything, give me 2,000, yet the fine that is provided for under that traffic act is 500 bob. So you give 2,000 thinking that you're helping yourself. Yet you can just go to court, it's a misdemeanor, it won't be on your record, you pay the traffic fine, 500 bob for standing in a matatu.
You're safe.
Yeah.
Out.
Then the second thing also, when I talk about bad habit, where should I stand when I know it's illegal? What did the late John Mishuki do? Mishuki told us, don't do this. If you do it, you'll be held responsible. Why are we having accidents right under footbridges? When we know we should be using the footbridge, then we are passing down there. That's not an act of God, that's an act of stupidity. You know, we have to face it. Right now, it's unfortunate I'm seeing so many lives being lost due to the floods. Where are the floods hitting most? Riparian land. Yesterday, I was somewhere in Kamiti, and right opposite Maziwa on Kamiti Road, is a swamp that was owned by the prison. Of course, it was grabbed, and people built on the swamp. Now the water is coming down from the hillside to the former swamp.
They cannot complete.
You cannot do anything. I mean, we've been sharing this clip around from Tanzania where someone says, if the water
it's coming back home.
It's coming back home. You know, so why don't we get it right? Why don't we keep the 30-meter distance from the riparian land, from the rivers, and plant trees there, and see if we'll still suffer the same fate. You know, we're blocking river paths. You know, we talk about the plains in Athi River and stuff, which were plains even a few years ago. There were
Oh,
planes.
yeah.
Then we've taken that, built estates there. Now the houses are marooned. The quality of workmanship of our roads as well. Those are criminal acts.
Right.
If you're in China, you'd be shot. You know, when you build a substandard road, which is, you've been paid top dollar for,
Right.
then you build a substandard road, which when rain comes, it washes it away. I've been asking myself this question the whole day. How is it that roads that were built pre-independence or during independence, those old roads, Busia,
Pretty much
Kisumu,
good.
you know, they're still standing.
Yeah.
Some repairs, but they're still standing. It's because of the quality of work. So I think also we need to be responsible. As we talk about crime by young people, crime by poor people, why don't we look at these corporate crimes that are really draining our economy and making these young people not to get their jobs and get the opportunities and go back to crime?
That brings us to the question that we began with, that is in relation to the root causes, the concerns, you know, that actually get us here to even have these discussions as society. Do you suppose we are addressing that, such that we know you could easily say that, fine, this is some of the things that we can't run away from. But then again, perhaps today we would not even be talking about how we're supposed to treat the ex-convicts and the ex-prisoners when they come back home. If at all we're going to address the root causes of what we consider to be aspects that take us to points of crime.
I think I'll look at this problem holistically. You know, it's mentioned the effect of corruption. So for instance now, if you go and steal money meant for the youth, right?
Yeah.
Or even meant for sports.
Or for sick people.
Or for sick people. So for instance, you've seen in most of these slums, most of these super footballers, right? You'll find they spend most of their times playing football. Some silly governor goes and grabs
The playing ground.
the playing ground. What do you expect them to do after that?
Are we trying to justify that perhaps it should proceed and do all this and commit all these crimes just because one individual has done this?
No, we're not trying to justify that.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is this. Let's start this at the top level.
Thank you.
Right? You see, somebody steals billions, and he was, as you rightfully said, we call this corruption. Yet if somebody snatches your phone, yule ni mwizi. So what's the difference between, in my opinion, there's no difference between somebody grabbing your phone on River Road and your governor. All of them are the same. In
If
fact,
your governor is corrupt,
if your governor is corrupt.
Yes.
Because not all. Let's qualify it.
But majority of them are anyway. Yeah. So if that is the case, you see, so in my opinion, there's no difference between your governor and that petty theft on River Road, right? So if you look at this problem holistically, where does it start? You see, when you're looking at a sin, you see, when you talk about sin, even in the Bible, you talk about the original sin, who committed the original sin, right? Before it trickled down to some of us, Ukuchini, right? So if you look at the original sin, because for instance now, if systems are properly working, if you go to the hospital, you find medicine. If right now you walk outside here, the road network is working. If your child or my child can be able to have a good education, if they're assured of a job, then this problem will automatically reduce. It's not even a problem of legislation, even if you lock up everybody and you don't address these issues.
You will release them to all this.
Yes, and then this issue of Kenyans also, I think, glorifying theft and glorifying corrupt leaders. I mean, that is a system also that we also need to look at how to change that system, where we glorify thieves, where somebody right now drives a Range Rover. Right now, today, I came here in an Uber. Next week, I'll come here maybe in a V8, and now you'll celebrate me, right? That kind of system and that kind of culture, we also need to change that.
We must tell them that we know what it is that they get. How is it that all of a sudden?
Exactly. You know, right now it cannot be, I'm walking today, and tomorrow I'm coming here with 10 bodyguards, and now you're glorifying me, Mheshimiwa.
We must question. We come back to you, Pete, and I appreciate what it is that you do in society. But like you have rightfully said, if at all this is going to be successful, the involvement of those that have tasted this kind of life, you know, the ex-convicts, the ex-prisoners, would be vital, would be crucial. If they're going to go and speak to the people down on ground, and whoever it is that they will speak to make sure that at least this change is experienced in society. Just how easy has it been, if at all you have engaged any of them, for them to come back and integrate to society and be appreciated in society, such that even in the existence of all these concerns that we are talking about, the root causes, they would still manage to stay afloat?
Number one, just to pick up from where Achilles talked about, I believe the Kenyan culture needs to go back to where it was. I happen to have been blessed to have walked through different culture. I mean, Kenya mutating through different spaces.
Yeah.
And I know Kenyans have the best of hearts. Look at what's happening right now. Even when people are drowning, guys would risk their lives to go help. There's this police person, and God rest his soul, who was amongst the first to die in these floods. His body has not been found to date. We are not celebrating him. We are busy celebrating other issues, you know. But this guy died trying to save lives. So for us at Crime Support, anybody who's been impacted by the criminal justice system, we call them returning citizens. We have to destigmatize. I was sharing with my brother today that, you know, we don't use the word ex-convict.
Yeah.
The prisons department is primed to correct and rehabilitate. And when they release someone, they release on the basis that that person, they've done their bit. So they've done their rehabilitation and correction. Our prisons and integration program at Crime Support, which is based now in the prisons, works to holistically address this issue. Be it the wellness, be it the psychosocial support, be it the talents that someone has, as is mentioned. Young people want to play football, they want to have games, and yet they don't have places to go do that. Once we address those core issues in those spaces where we work with the welfare officers, with the prisons department, there's also the probation and aftercare department, which is doing a great work. The biggest challenge we have with these two key departments in the criminal justice system, they are not as well resourced as the other departments. So they might have the best of intentions, but there's not even enough money to supervise the inmates, the returning citizens who've been released. So number one, I always cry and ask the legislature, why don't you give enough resources to the prisons and aftercare department and correction and aftercare department to be able to manage their mandate? Now, you've asked me about our experiences with those who've been impacted. One of our girls right now, I can tell you, who's been impacted, is in second year in university. Beautiful. Leading from the front. In the public space, in private space, she's mentoring kids in schools. She's leading from her community from the front, her college, sorry. Another one is doing culinary arts. Same story. Another one is a very sharp IT guy. Wow. I hope TV47 gets him once he clears his technical college. Amen to that. I mean, yeah, he's just, you see the heart. One of my brothers I wanted to come with now is doing upholstery. He did upholstery in prison. He did mechanics. He has 3 grade 1 certificates. If the government could take these guys who've been in prison for 15, 20 years and have grade 1 certificates and employ them as tutors in the TVETs, you'd get some of the best qualified, because these guys have experience and they can make the best of everything. So if you're talking about, I mean, how do we look at that? I believe that society is trying. There's less stigma. From what I see, there's less stigma, but there's need for more support. Some of the guys who go to prison, they had basic education or little education. What has the prisons department done? They've set up schools within those prisons. Yes. So Naivasha Maximum has the biggest prison school in Africa, over 1,000 students at any given time. And they're doing the exams. I mean, Dr. Maina is now clearing his 6th year at med school. You know, the other doctor cleared his veterinary and is working. The former president got him a job in the civil service. So I believe the stigmatization, as you were saying, you have your record, you have your certificate of good conduct that you have to, you know, and yet you've already paid your dues. Okay. So it's a contradiction of sorts. But I'll tell you one thing, those who are coming out of prison, especially the long-serving inmates, because you raise the issue of those who come in and go. Some of them have just gone to remand, been released on bond. Yeah. Those are Sumbua guys. Yes. But anybody who served 5 years and above, you can be sure they've learned, whether rightfully or wrongly, they were there, they've learned their part and they want to come and make the best out of the opportunity they have. Beautiful. Recidivism rate in Kenya is very low from the maximum security prisons. You can take that from me. Right. But my biggest worry, having said that, is the issue of pornography and sexual offenses in this country, which goes now to the root again of human trafficking and sex trafficking. Yeah. Because between 65 and 70% of all inmates in our major prisons today are in for sexual offenses. Right. Not robbery, not murder, not anything, it's sexual offenses. So we also have to look at ourselves as a society. In as much as some of those cases are being used to settle scores, because maybe Mzee has refused to give his title deed for something. Yeah. So you find very old Wazee from very well-off families locked up, and the moment the land has been transferred to the family members, they are mysteriously released again. Yeah. So just as we started, people misusing the criminal justice system to punish very innocent people. I had an 80-year-old person in prison who was in for the same thing. Right. And the judge followed up the case and, that he was released. So what I want to say is Kenya is at a nice pace where even issues of the death penalty, which was the highest for murder suspects, is not now mandatory. A judge can has a discretion to make the sentence. One or two, I know you'll ask me about like Joey's case we were discussing here the other day. Joey could have been sentenced to death for the offense, and he has a right for appeal, which he's pursuing.
Yes.
So I won't talk about that. But there are cases where we've had convictions for murder, and they're given 30 years, 25 years. So judges now have discretion. That's why we have less and less people on death row in our prisons.
Okay.
Judges have a discretion. Previously, I'll just
briefly.
Yeah, I'll just finish something briefly. This phone here has landed so many people in prison because you bought this phone
from a person.
You don't know where it came from.
Yes.
So I'm telling Kenyans, don't buy phones before you know where they've come from. The definition of robbery with violence, which takes many young people to prison, is very, very, very broad. So me and Wakili, we find you with this phone. We are not armed. The fact that we are two, we are more than one. Yes. And we tell you, give us the phone. And we take it. We don't even harm you. Give us the phone, we take it. Yeah. If you are arrested, we can be charged with robbery with violence. And we'll end up on death row.
Oh.
The same as someone who's armed with a gun, comes and beats you or shoots you dead and takes your phone. The sentence is the same.
It is the same.
So you see, the penal code has been, it's been work in progress about, when do we change it, when we improve on it, It's taken so long, yet it's a colonial relic.
And therefore you should just stay.
So some people are going to prison for the same offenses, for charges that hold higher sentences, yet if you look at the gravity of the offense, it's not as much as it should,
Probably a classic example of saying hakuna dhambi ndogo. Briefly, let's loop in Wakili, especially as he gets to expound on that. But as well, help us understand, and I'm glad that you bring back the question of the good conduct. I'm just curious, for purposes of enlightening the people out there. And sometimes we go for our good conducts because, we need it at that very point, and we don't get to bother why they're taking our fingerprints and all that, and how different it would be for an individual who perhaps has been convicted before or has been in prison before. Just what are the intrigues and what are the differences in this very case? So perhaps this one would never get a good conduct at all?
Now, you see, you'll get the good conduct, of course, because if you check, if you have ever seen your good conduct, it will show nil, like crimes, it will show nil.
Yes.
But now this other one, it will show exactly
the crimes
you have committed. Yes. So now, assuming now you present me with a good conduct, I'll be able to see this one, probably there's a robbery with violence here and such a thing. So now the sad thing about that, automatically, somebody, if you can imagine you're trying to employ me as a driver, and I come in and I present you with my good conduct. And what you see is this guy was charged with, was convicted of robbery with violence. Yeah.
Even before you get to hear their story, whether it was just...
That's it. That's the end of the story. You don't want to listen to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm talking about, it's important. Even our criminal justice system also understands. Once somebody is going to prison and they have served their sentence, they are paid their dues. You see, this is like double punishment.
Yeah, double jeopardy.
You go in, you serve your sentence. Is it not
proper to just alert the society that just stay on alert?
No, in my opinion, I think it's important to have that record, yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, why would you, put somebody through all this process? Yourself, you're saying you've corrected them. Now this is a good person. That is why they have been released, right?
Right.
Now it comes back to the society, and they're not even able to get a job.
They carry the tag.
And now they carry this tag for the rest of their life.
And it's even worse because recently they were talking about how this tag you would carry even from the level of primary school and secondary school, because then you're going to have one or less. You're going to have all these reports under probably one document that would be speaking to basically what it is that you've done right from childhood. I remember, and this was pretty much high, I conversed about during the times of ASON attacks in schools. Yeah,
you see, the thing is, the age of criminal culpability is 12 under the new Children's Act.
Yes.
So you can be charged for an offense from the age of 12, which means you'll have a record.
Right.
You get it? But this is a child. For the next 6 years, from 12, they'll still be children.
Right.
And yet the crime figures are also very funny. You find crimes committed by young people, especially violent crimes, are grievous. Some time back, you remember there was demonstrations in Githurai, those sides, about a former cop called Katitu.
Yes.
Katitu, basically, most of the offenses he was charged with were of young people who were carjacking buses along Thika Road, very viciously robbing people, doing crazy things. And then strangely, the community was supporting Katito.
Yes.
You know, you'll find in the communities where we are at many times now, you'll notice a trend has started nowadays. If someone robs people and they're using Andudhi, a border, it's the border people who chase them and mete out injustice to them.
Yes, because they say you're
because
going to spoil the business for us. Yes.
You get it? So is it because Kenyans don't trust the criminal justice system? I'll tell you one thing. I work with the police.
Yeah.
We bring them to talk to young people. We bring them to be part and parcel of the solution to the security problems, because that's their primary mandate. As an NGO, that's not our duty. Our duty is about awareness. But when we bring these players into that space, we've seen a lot of change. Because now we demystify the Afande and the Raya thing. When you can sit down with a police officer and ask questions, and then they give you answers immediately, you realize that there are things that you are assuming for the longest that can actually be addressed. So even though I know my brother talked about corruption, we've stereotyped all police as being corrupt. But I'll tell you one thing: go to Huruma police station here. Right here along Juja Road, Huruma covers Kiamaiko, some of the previously worst crime-prone areas. What have they done? We have the first legal support center in a prison in this country.
Beautiful.
That's what Crime People has done there with partnership with the Kenya Police. So young people are being taught the law. We've trained paralegals there. They are going into the community, and now the conflict between law enforcement and the Raya has lessened.
Yes.
So you'll find if a crime happens in Huruma, it's not people who live in Huruma. They're people who come from out. They commit a crime and they go out. Okay. So when we do that in all our stations, there's increased vigilance. And of course, the other thing I've seen is when communities make a complaint about this particular cop being corrupt, being X, nowadays I see action being taken.
Okay.
So what we're encouraging young people, talk. Those offices are public offices. Don't fear going into a police station.
Right.
Go and talk. If you can't talk to this particular police, go to the OCS. If you can't talk to the OCS, go to the OCPD.
Yeah.
If you can't, go to vigilance. They have a communications department.
Is it that easy? Is it that easy? And I'll tell you, most of the women I have spoken to who said that, I went to report my problem, perhaps maybe with violence, back at home. And sometimes the police would just even laugh at you. So you're asking yourself, all right, I haven't gotten help at this very stage. What gives me the confidence that the OCPD will listen to me? And how do I even how do they allow me to get to that space? So is it as easy and as smooth and seamless as Pete would say?
I would say it's mostly that easy.
Yes.
Right? Of course, there are those exceptions. You don't hear of those cases every single day.
Yeah.
Right? That maybe you went, it doesn't happen every single day. There are exceptional cases that happens. Of course, there are good cops and there are good and the bad ones as well.
Yes. So
there are situations where maybe you'll go and report and whatever you're saying is not taken seriously. But at the same time, I think, as you were saying, it's important, especially in the informal settlement, that we demystify crime. We demystify this issue of, the police appear to be, there's this pomp and call about the police as if they're above everybody else. Yes. So that we need to demystify. So we need to tell the society, this is a human being like you. If you go and report, because they also suffer from the same thing you're suffering from. Yeah. If there's a crime in an area, they're also human beings. They also fear.
They're not safe.
Yes, and they also live, within that community.
Right.
So of course they're willing to support. But I think the kind of work that his organization does, it's important that we embrace and support that kind of work.
Right.
So that they bring all the actors together.
Right.
They don't sit, where some of us sit up there. That it appears as if you're unreachable. So it's important that we have this conversation at that local level. And I think the kind of work that his organization is doing is very important, so that we demystify these issues, so that, when, assuming now, even if you have paralegals in a slum, if a woman goes and reports and there's a challenge in reporting, they can go back to the paralegal and say, I went to report, this is the challenge I faced, and how can we solve it?
All right.
So it's important.
And I totally agree with you, Askili. The challenge we've had is that lack of knowledge, and especially of the referral pathways. I know if he's a human rights lawyer and I have a challenge with any of the criminal justice sector players, if I go to him, he has a bigger voice, he has a bigger stake, he'll speak for me. But the biggest challenge we've had for the longest, especially in Mtaani, people fear. Like, it's something been ingrained with us to fear authority.
Yeah.
But now we are coming to a stage, like the TikTok generation who don't fear. They ask questions.
Yes.
They ask hard questions. And so I'm encouraging everyone, victims of violence, we've had many of those cases. But I'll tell you, from where I've seen in the last 3 months only, the paralegals we have in the community, because we have paralegals, 15 active paralegals with us right now, but we've trained over 100 paralegals within this town. And then there's Paralegal Society of Kenya also that has a bigger number, you know. So if you're in the community and you want to learn the law or you want to know how referral pathways go, there are these people who've been trained to help you do that. So, for example, in Wetevye, which is in our metropolitan Thika, we have Huruma, we have Kangware. As late as this week, we are dealing with cases, some being taken to court, some ADR, being handled through ADR. But people knowing, number one, if there's an issue, where should they report? Who should they report to? You have an issue of child molestation, sexual violence, assault, then you go to the chief. That's not the work of the chief. Go to the police station, go report, get that OB. If you want to sort it out later because that's your hobby and you feel community will judge you harshly, that's your own issue, but let the due process have that thing recorded.
Yes.
Then after that, go to hospital, get your P3 filled, get treatment. Now you have backup. Once you have that backup, that person will fear touching you again.
Okay.
Because they know it's been documented somewhere and there's someone watching.
Right.
So speak out. What I'm encouraging people, speak out.
And understand the law.
Understand the law.
Okay. Wakili, we look again at these persons that, officially then come from prison and are out to the world. Just how crucial is this process, in terms of shaping them? If at all they were convicted rightfully in this very case, the perspective of rehabilitation and addressing this injustice.
Yeah. So I think it's important that, first of all, as a society, we understand that once somebody has been convicted and of course, they serve their sentence and they come back out of this, come out to the world. That they'll serve their dues. Right. So it's important that we know that. Secondly, it's important that we know that once somebody has served their dues, how do we welcome them back to the society?
Right.
Because I find that most of the time we are in my opinion, we are a very vindictive society. We don't think that these people can reform. We don't look at. Once they've reformed, how do we integrate them back to the society, right? So I think we need to design, or we need to look at our system in a way that addresses or looks at these people beyond the gates of prison. Yes, because I think, and I think it's rightfully said, you find that most of these people, once they come out of these prisons, they are not able to get employment. They suffer a lot of stigmatization. And so, for instance, if somebody is not even able to get a good conduct, how do you expect them to get employment? It means you're leaving them again prone to crime. So it's important that we deal with these issues as a society. Yes, and it's important that I think as much as we're saying that people need to learn or people need to know the law, that is very important, I agree. But at the same time as a society, how do we... I find it so painful that somebody goes to prison, serves their sentence, comes back to, again, the same challenges.
In society.
In the society. Where you're stigmatized, assuming now even you rape somebody. The same society looks at you as a sexual offender, and this is a tag you carry for the rest of your life. So we need to look for ways of demystifying these issues. We need to look for ways of integrating people back to the society. Yes, that is how I need to look at it.
Peter, as you close it for us, I'm curious, would it be safe, would it be good for one to say, okay, maybe this tag is on me and truly I committed this crime, but thankfully I'm out and I have reformed, I have changed, my perspective is shaped differently now that I have undergone this prison space and, I have learned so much. Is it safe perhaps to maybe move spaces and probably not go back to the same space that you were in?
I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing about my experiences. People who committed crimes and they've gone through the criminal justice system and they know they committed the crimes, they talk about it.
Yes.
They don't talk about it from a point of pride. They say, I made a mistake, I've paid my dues, I'm asking for a second chance. That's all. That's just like Wakili is saying. All they're asking for is a second chance. They want to put that behind them. In fact, they've put it behind them.
Yes.
The prisons department nowadays is designed in such a way to help you put that stigma behind you. So you might be calling him an ex-convict, whatever, but he doesn't look at himself or her as an ex-convict. I work with ex-inmates who are ladies, returning citizens. We're in a chama with them.
Yes, we're saying it's returning citizens.
Yeah, returning citizens.
Yes.
We're in a chama with them.
Yeah.
And when we started this chama, they invited a few of us, 3 of us actually, men, just to join. And it's a ladies' chama. So I'm not Abu Mama's, But I've seen the transformation. They didn't have the confidence. Now they're glowing. They're doing stuff. They're borrowing good money from the merry-go-round, and they're doing impactful things with their lives. We have some of the best tailors, some of the best tutors. I want to encourage everyone, give these guys a chance. Buy their products. We have some of the best mechanics. Give them the jobs. You will not be disappointed. Some of the best builders, some of the best, all this. And you know why? I say that because I was an ex-inmate. You didn't know that.
Oh.
Yeah.
You should have told us your story as we sum it up.
That wasn't the topic today.
Yes, that wasn't the topic today. We had Kaploti to tell the story, yes.
Yeah, the thing is, I was wrongfully convicted. I was in prison for 18 years. Yeah? But that didn't deter me from doing what I do. I started Crime Super on death row. And one thing I want to tell everyone is, give those guys a chance.
Yes.
Every one of us here might be out here, and we don't know where we'll end up next time.
All right. We have to close because the rains are out here and they're not so good, and we all want to be home safe, yeah?
Sure.
A lot of crime as well happens during the rain.
Yeah, especially burglaries.
Yes. So please, let us be safe. Beautiful, and thank you so much, Pete, for equally sharing your story and beyond the story, doing what it is that you're doing in society. And Brian Olang, we continue talking, despite everything, and on a legal perspective, it makes so much sense to people. And again, well, we could not get Kaploti here, but all the same, well represented. Asante sana Kaploti. Pete Ouko, ED, Executive Director, that is of Crime Super. Thank you so much, as well as Brian Olang, Human Rights Lawyer. We close it at this very point. I know there's so much that we would have touched on, but story for another day. I mean, we will never run out of airtime to discuss these things that can help society. My name is Linda Alela. I have, of course, had the most of pleasure doing this with you, and looking forward to have you sometime next week. Do have yourself a lovely night. Bye-bye. And keep safe. Thank you.